Charleston White, standing outside a police station narrating his own police report to the internet. Young thug has a 20-year prison sentence sitting behind 15 years of probation, and White just showed up to a Drusky party with what he claims is enough to pull that trigger. Here's how it got there. A confrontation at Drusky's reunion that nobody saw coming. A man with a criminal justice degree, a mace can, and literally nothing to lose. And a rapper freshly out of a RICO case who may have just handed his freedom to the one person in hip-hop you cannot shame into silence. This is the story of how one night in Miami, on the weekend of March 28, 2026, became the most legally dangerous moment of young thug's post-prison life, and why Charleston White might actually be able to make good on his promise. Drusky, comedian, internet sensation, and one of the most beloved figures in hip-hop, had organized his Coulda Been Love 2 reunion event in Miami. It was supposed to be a celebration, a night for the culture. People from across the entertainment world were in attendance, and by most accounts, the energy heading into that weekend was festive, light, and celebratory. Charleston White was there, young thug, Jeffrey Lamar Williams, Grammy-winning rapper, founder of YSL Records, and a man currently serving 15 years of probation following his October 31, 2024 guilty plea in the Fulton County YSL RICO case, was also there. And somewhere in that building, in that space, on what White is now claiming was federal FAA property, two worlds collided in the worst possible way. According to Charleston White's own detailed on-camera account, young thug and a crew of associates approached him, and not in a friendly way. White says he was alone. He says they were a group. He says the words that came at him were not vague. He says one member of Thug's crew, a heavyset man White described in vivid, almost comedic detail, was visibly clutching what White believed to be a gun. And he says that the words spoken to him, words that he is now repeating to police, to probation officers, to federal authorities, and to anyone who will listen, were direct enough to constitute a criminal threat under Georgia and federal law. Here is Charleston White in his own words, immediately after the incident. Read that back. You said we. Charleston White, a man who spent 7 years in juvenile detention, who earned a criminal justice degree from Texas Wesleyan University, who has been studying the law and its loopholes his entire adult life, is not listening to these words the way a regular person would. He is listening to them the way a prosecutor would. The word "we," in the context of a threat, he argues, demonstrates coordinated action. That is conspiracy language. That is gang conduct language. And young thug, under his probation terms, cannot be anywhere near that conversation. But it does not stop there. Now we are in an entirely different legal territory. Because young thug, as a convicted felon on probation, is forbidden from being in the presence of firearms. It does not matter whose gun it is. It does not matter that he was not the one holding it. Probation terms, specifically the ones attached to a RICO conviction, are designed with almost paranoid precision. Being in the company of someone who is visibly armed, according to the conditions of Thug's specific probation agreement, can constitute a violation on its own. And White knows this. He has said he knows this, loudly, repeatedly, on camera. What White did next is the part that shifted this from a beef to something with actual legal legs. He did not go home. He did not post a diss. He drove to a police station. He posted a photo of himself standing in front of that police station on Instagram. And underneath it, he wrote the caption that is now echoing across every corner of hip-hop social media. I promise you, Jeffrey, going back to jail for probation violation. He laid out in video after video exactly what he planned to do. He was contacting his attorney. He was filing for a restraining order. He was reaching out to Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis, the same DA who built the original YSL RICO case and who had already, according to White, attempted to revoke Thug's probation before this incident even occurred. He said he was contacting federal authorities because the alleged threats were made on private airport property, FAA-regulated land, which potentially elevates the charge from a state matter to a federal one. And here is where the story gets genuinely complicated, Because Charleston White is not just a loudmouth with a camera. He has a track record of following through. He has maced people. He has contacted law enforcement before. He has filed police reports before. He is someone who openly, proudly, and unapologetically weaponizes the very system that hip-hop culture has spent decades as teaching its audience to distrust. And Young Thug, a man who has already spent roughly 2.5 years behind bars awaiting trial, who navigated one of the most expensive and drawn-out criminal prosecutions in Georgia history, walked directly into this man's orbit, on probation, at a public event, with an entourage, and allegedly, let someone in that entourage carry a firearm onto federal property. Notice the detail. White is not just saying there was a gun, he is saying there was a YSL spider chain on the man who was clutching it. He is tying the alleged firearm possession directly to YSL gang symbolism, which, under the specific terms of Young Thug's probation, is a separate and distinct violation from the gun issue itself. Thug is forbidden from promoting, associating with, or being in the presence of criminal street gang activity in any form. A YSL chain is not just jewelry in this context. In a Fulton County courtroom, following a RICO conviction in which prosecutors successfully argued that YSL was a criminal enterprise, that chain is evidence. He has photos, he claims to have video, and he says he is sending all of it, not to a blog, not to a YouTube channel, but directly to Young Thug's probation officer and to the Fulton County District Attorney's office. Whether or not the evidence is as airtight as White claims, the machinery is now in motion. And in the next part of this video, we are going to show you exactly why the legal architecture surrounding Young Thug's probation makes this man's threats far more dangerous than anyone in hip-hop seems to want to admit. To understand why Charleston White's threats carry weight that most people are not properly appreciating, you have to understand what Young Thug agreed to on October 31st, 2024. Because the deal Jeffrey Williams signed was not a standard plea bargain. It was not the kind of arrangement where you do a few years, walk out, and pick up your life where you left it. What Thug signed was essentially a legal sword hanging above his head for the next 15 years, with a blade heavy enough to cut 20 years off his remaining time on this earth if it ever drops. Here is the architecture of what Young Thug actually agreed to. He pleaded guilty to 6 charges, including gang participation, drug possession, and firearm-related counts, as well as entering a nolo contendere, no contest, plea to leading a criminal street gang and RICO conspiracy. The judge sentenced him to 40 years total. The first 5 years were commuted to time served. He had already been locked up for roughly 2.5 years since his arrest in May 2022, so that math worked out to immediate release. But the remaining sentence did not disappear. It was restructured into what legal observers described as a backloaded 20-year prison term, meaning that if Young Thug violates his probation in any material way, a judge can send him directly back to prison for up to 2 decades, not to a new trial, not to a new sentencing hearing where mitigating factors can be argued. Back, directly, for 20 years. That is the sword. Now let's talk about the rope he has to walk. And Charleston White, the man who filed the report, drove to the station and has been narrating every step of this process for his audience in real time, wants you to understand that he knows exactly what that sword means. He said it clearly. A revocation hearing, not a new trial, not a fresh indictment. A hearing which carries a far lower burden of proof than a criminal conviction, where a judge reviews whether the terms of Thug's existing probation were broken. And the terms of that probation are where this story gets truly extraordinary. The probation conditions attached to Young Thug's release are, by virtually every legal expert's assessment, among the most restrictive ever imposed on a major recording artist in American history. Let's go through the key ones because each of them is relevant to what Charleston White is now claiming happened in Miami. First, a 10-year ban from Metro Atlanta. Young Thug, the man who built YSL Records, whose musical DNA is woven into the fabric of the city, who has been a cornerstone of Atlanta's cultural identity for over a decade, cannot enter the metro Atlanta area as defined by the U.S. Census Bureau, except for narrowly defined family emergencies. He was given 2 days to leave after sentencing. He has essentially been exiled from the city that made him. Second, he cannot promote gangs, make gang references, flash gang signs, or associate with gang activity in any medium, including music, social media, or public appearances. His lyrics, his Instagram, his tweets, all of it is subject to scrutiny. This is not theoretical. In April 2025, prosecutors actually sought revocation of his probation over a deleted social media post that they alleged was targeting a witness in the YSL case. The judge declined to revoke at that time, but the motion was filed. The machinery was activated. Thug got a warning shot across the bow and kept walking. Third, and this is the one that Charleston White is specifically targeting, he cannot knowingly associate with criminal street gang members. The exceptions are narrow. His brother Unfunk and Gunna, but only as long as Gunna remains contractually tied to YSL records. Outside of those carve-outs, if you have been identified as a criminal street gang member, particularly a YSL-affiliated one, Young Thug cannot be in your presence. And Charleston White says he has photos of everyone who was with Thug that night. He says one of them was wearing an YSL spider chain. He says he is sending those photos to the probation office. Fourth, no possession of firearms, no being in the presence of firearms, no drug paraphernalia, and his person, home, vehicle, and property are all subject to warrantless searches at any time. This is not the freedom most people picture when they think of being out on probation. This is monitored liberty with a hair trigger. Now listen to what White says he did the morning after the incident. The procedural precision of someone who understands exactly how this system works. This is not bluster. This is a philosophy. Charleston White has been saying for years that once you give him a reason to act, he will act. And that there is no amount of social pressure, no amount of peer judgment, no amount of snitch labeling from the hip-hop community that will stop him from doing so. He does not care about being called a rat. He has said on record that he is a rat. He has leaned into that identity with a kind of defiant glee that makes him uniquely dangerous in this specific situation. Because the one person you absolutely cannot pressure into silence is the person who has already surrendered that concern entirely. White understands the cumulative nature of probation enforcement. He understands that Thug has already had at least one prior motion for revocation filed against him. He understands that probation officers and judges operate on patterns, that every violation attempt, even the ones that fail, builds a paper trail that makes the next one easier to act on. He is not just throwing one report into the void, he is adding to a stack that prosecutors have already been building. This is the key tactical move. A restraining order, if granted, does more than just legally separate White from Thug. It creates a documented, court-recognized record that a judge has formally acknowledged White's fear of physical harm from Young Thug and his associates. If Thug violates that restraining order, which is not inconceivable given that he allegedly approached White once already, then you are no longer dealing with a probation review. You are dealing with a new criminal charge, and a new criminal charge under the terms of his RICO plea is the single fastest route to that 20-year backloaded sentence being activated. Now let us be clear about what is confirmed and what is alleged. As of early April 2026, no official charges have been filed, no arrest has been made, and no probation violation has been formally confirmed. We are operating in the realm of claims, videos, and social media. The publicly circulating footage shows a heated verbal exchange, with security intervening, not a smoking gun. White's detailed descriptions of a firearm have not been independently corroborated. Thug's side has not publicly responded in detail. These are allegations, and allegations alone do not send anyone back to prison. But here is what is not an allegation. The probation terms exist. The prior revocation attempt exists. The backloaded 20-year sentence exists. And Charleston White, a man who has a criminal justice degree and has spent his entire adult life studying the intersection of street culture and law enforcement, has publicly stated that he has filed a police report contacted a probation officer, and is pursuing a restraining order. That machinery, whether or not it ultimately succeeds, is now in motion. And the hip-hop world, as we are about to show you, is watching it spin with a combination of alarm, amusement, and some genuinely sobering warnings from people who know exactly what is at stake. By the time the internet woke up the morning after the Drusky event, the Charleston White and Young Thug situation had already metastasized beyond a simple he said altercation at a celebrity party. It had become a full-scale cultural flashpoint, the kind of moment that forces an entire community to reckon with questions it has been trying to avoid since the day the YSL RICO indictment first dropped in May 2022. Questions about loyalty, about street codes in the age of RICO law, about what it means to survive incarceration and come home and still feel the gravitational pull of the exact same energy that put you in a cell in the first place. And into this conversation stepped Rollo, an Atlanta rapper with his own complicated history with both Thug and the federal court system. And what he said was not what anyone expected. Rollo did not come to Thug's defense. He came with something far more instructive. He came with a warning that read less like internet commentary and more like a letter from someone who has lived through the consequences of bad decisions and watched others pay the price for theirs. Let's hear exactly what Rollo said, because the precision of his language is worth paying attention to. Let that land. Rollo, who has his own documented history of federal legal issues, is drawing a direct line between himself and Charleston White. He is saying, I can get confrontational. I can respond to disrespect, but I do it in a way that does not involve putting people in cages. And then he turns the corner. This is the voice of experience speaking. Rollo is not glorifying Charleston White. He is not celebrating what White is doing. He is issuing a tactical assessment, engaging this particular man for this particular set of reasons, in this particular moment in time, is among the most strategically destructive things a person on federal probation can do. And then he delivers the line that has been shared more times than probably any other moment in this entire situation. You was supposed to slap that man away. Not fight him, not approach him, not match his energy. Walk away. Walk directly and immediately away from a man whose entire brand is built around making your legal situation worse. That is the advice Rollo is giving, and it is the kind of advice that only makes sense once you understand the full architecture of who Charleston White actually is and what he has been willing to do throughout his public life. Charleston White was born in Fort Worth, Texas in 1977. At 14 years old, he was involved in an incident during a shoplifting attempt in which a companion shot and killed a man who confronted them. White was convicted of first-degree murder as a juvenile, one of the youngest in Tarrant County history at the time, and sentenced to juvenile detention, where he served approximately 7 years until he was 21. After his release, he earned a bachelor's degree in criminal justice from Texas Wesleyan University and co-founded a youth outreach organization called HYPE, helping young people excel. He openly admits to cooperating with authorities at various points in his life. He does not apologize for it. He weaponizes it. He built his entire public identity around the idea that the no snitching code is a myth, a performance, and a lie. And he has spent years daring the most prominent names in hip-hop to challenge that assertion to his face. And now, apparently, one of them did, DJ Academics, who has access to information and sources across the industry and is one of the most widely watched commentators in the hip-hop media space, reacted to the incident with a tone that was notably short on entertainment value and long on alarm. We felt bad for you the first time. That phrase, with the emphasis on first time, is doing enormous work. It is acknowledging that when Thug was swept up in the original YSL RICO case, there was genuine sympathy in certain corners of the community, a man whose music had been explicitly used as evidence against him, a man held without bond for years while the trial dragged on. Whatever your view on the underlying charges, there was a human story in there that people responded to. But Academics is signaling something here, that sympathy is not a renewable resource. It gets depleted with each new incident. And then he adds the detail that crystallized what a lot of people were privately thinking: condo thugging in Miami. Which, to be fair, is not a probation violation on its own. Thug is banned from Metro Atlanta, not from the rest of the country. And Miami is as far from Atlanta as you can get while staying in the Southeast. But the energy that academics is describing, the performative toughness, the entourage, the running through events looking for friction, is precisely the behavior that creates situations like the one with Charleston White. And then academics delivers the warning in its clearest, most direct form. The fan reaction across social media split almost immediately into three camps. The first camp was sharply critical of Thug, not from a place of hostility toward him as an artist, but from a place of genuine bewilderment at the decision-making. The phrase, "Why would you go anywhere near Charleston White if you on parole?" became a refrain that echoed across comment sections and X threads. The second camp defended Thug, or at minimum questioned White's credibility, noting his history of inflammatory statements, his self-admitted provocateur role, and the fact that the publicly available video footage shows a heated confrontation without, based on what T has circulated, clear visual confirmation of the firearm White describes. The third camp, and this may be the most honest of the three, simply found the entire situation hilarious. A rat versus rat meme war for the ages that turned into a philosophical debate about whether hip-hop's most sacred informal law, the no snitching code, was ever anything more than a performance. What Charleston White's broader history with Thug reveals is that this confrontation did not emerge from a vacuum. White has been going after young Thug for months, specifically since resurfaced audio from a 2015 police interrogation went viral in August 2025. In that recording, Thug voluntarily spoke with Atlanta detectives about a shooting at Lil Wayne's tour bus and, in the course of that conversation, mentioned YSL affiliate Pee Wee Roscoe by name in connection with selling marijuana. White declared this dry snitching. He declared it hypocrisy, since Thug had publicly dragged Gunna for his offered plea, all while allegedly doing his own version of the exact same thing years earlier. Thug pushed back, arguing the interrogation was not used against him in court because it showed him helping rather than harming his associate. Pee Wee Roscoe, for his part, defended Thug publicly, saying the comments were typical interrogation room talk, and that Thug was clean. But White kept coming. He said he had paperwork. He released video after video. And now, according to White, the man he has been verbally battling from across the internet decided to make the battle physical, or at least physically proximate, at a party in Miami. Which brings us to the fundamental question that this entire situation raises. What happens next? No official charges have been confirmed as of early April 2026. No probation violation has been formally filed. No arrest has been made. Probation officers, as White himself explained in his own video, do not simply take a social media post and immediately revoke someone's freedom. There is a process, a procedural investigation. Paperwork moves from Miami, where Thug's probation has reportedly been transferred, back to Fulton County in Atlanta. Supervisors review it. Decisions are made through a chain of official judgment, not through Twitter outrage. That process takes time, and it may ultimately conclude that what White has provided is insufficient to trigger a revocation hearing. But the probation framework itself, 15 years of supervision, a 20-year backloaded sentence, strict conditions on association, firearms, gang activity, and new criminal conduct, means that even an investigation, even a formal inquiry that does not result in revocation, creates consequences. It creates documentation. It creates scrutiny. It puts Thug's probation officer on alert in a way that makes every subsequent decision about travel, association, and public appearance even more consequential than it already was. And Charleston White? He is walking taller than ever. He has said, with an enthusiasm that is equal parts genuine and performative, that sending Thug back to prison would be one of the great satisfactions of his life. He has talked about what it will feel like to walk through Atlanta knowing he did it. He is not slowing down. He is not softening the rhetoric. He is pushing forward with every legal instrument available to him, and he is narrating the entire process in real time for an audience that cannot look away.